Welcome to Tales from a Retro Gamer, episode number 7. Should be a fun episode. Going to be talking a little bit of Intellivision. Going to be talking about an incredible painting I saw recently that does have a tie-in to the Intellivision, so stick with me. So recently, Intellivision has announced the different color schemes for the Amico console. Now, some of you may know the Amico is coming out in October of 2020. This is sort of a retro-inspired console. It kind of crosses the line between modern and retro. It's obviously a new system coming out, but the games will be download only. They'll cost between $3 and $8 a piece, so very cool price point. The Intellivision Amico is endorsed by Tommy Tallarico, who many of you probably have heard of because he's scored a bunch of different video games. He's a music composer, and he does the Video Games Live events. Maybe some of you have been to those concerts. Really cool guy. I've met him a few times at the Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas. Really nice guy. He's hooked me up with tickets to Video Games Live for Fort Worth Star-Telegram article I was working on. So just having Tommy behind the Intellivision Amico gives me a lot of confidence in it. And like I said, it does have a mix of the old and the new downloaded games, but it's going to be a 2D graphic system, and it's going to have simple games, the company's saying, and it's they're not going to have adult-themed games, so it's family-friendly console. And the aim of the company of Intellivision in its current incarnation is to, like the old system, to bring the families together to play games in the living room, couch co-op, all that good stuff. So I'm really excited about the Intellivision Amico. Now, one thing's kind of ironic about this system. They're promising simple games that are easy, plug and play, that kind of thing. Just things you don't have to read long manuals or figure out what a million buttons will do. Which is kind of ironic because the original Intellivision that came out, test marketed in '79, it came out in the US in 1980, it was sort of considered the more complex alternative to the Atari 2600. It had a controller with 17 buttons, and it had some complex games. Sports titles were more complicated, more graphically advanced than the Atari 2600, and it had games like Utopia, strategy games that were more complex. Anyway, so it's an Intellivision branded console, the Amico. I'm looking forward to it coming out next year. I'm definitely going to pick one up. I'm totally on board. I like simple games, big fan of 2D stuff. Looking forward to it. So this has a strange tie-in. Just recently, as I was reading about the Amico, the different color schemes. By the way, I'm totally on board with the black and blue version that reminds me of Tron. Now, a lot of my retro gaming friends are going to go for the wood grain, which is cool. Kind of evokes the old Intellivision, the Atari 2600 and stuff. But I'm going for the Tron colors. So on the way to Chicago, I was sort of reading more about the Amico in the background, reading up on over that. And in Chicago, we went to the Art Institute, incredible museum. And one of their, probably the most famous painting they have is American Gothic. That's Grant Wood's American Gothic. Even if you're not a fan of art, you've seen this parodied magazines, newspapers. It's the farmer with the pitchfork and the lady, and they're standing in front of a house. You've seen it. Even if you haven't seen the actual painting, you've seen it parodied all over the place. Very cool painting. So I wanted, we made sure to see that. And if you're a hardcore Intellivision fan, you may know that art was parodied on the cover of Worm Womper. Worm Womper is one of my favorite Intellivision games of all time. And you may never have even heard of it. If you've read my 100 Greatest Console Video Games book, you've heard of it because it's in there. It was an easy pick. So I just love this game. It's a really fast-paced arcade-style shooter for the Intellivision. Now, the Intellivision doesn't have a ton of fast-paced arcade-style shooters, so this one really stands out. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to find. But picture it as sort of Centipede sideways, where it's just a real intense, fast-action shooter. Now, in the classic game, and sometime in the 2000s, either 2007 or 2009 Classic Gaming Expo in Las Vegas, I found a copy of Worm Womper, factory sealed, sitting on a table for $7. I could not believe it. Such an incredible deal. Even then, when retro gaming was just starting to really snowball and getting really, pick up in mainstream popularity, it was already a fairly pricey title, and to see one sitting there for $7 factory sealed, I grabbed it. Now, it crossed my mind that maybe I should sell this on eBay, because I could have gotten then probably 50, 60, 70 bucks for it. Now probably way more than that, probably $200, $300. But I didn't want to. I wanted to open it because to me, opening a factory sealed game is like a cheap form of time travel. It's like being in the early '80s. If you open a factory sealed Atari 2600 game, ColecoVision and Intellivision, it's like a cheap ticket to the past. So I still have my copy of Worm Whomper that I opened. There's the box, as you can see. It's got the American Gothic parody cover, and it did come with controller overlays, and of course I've got the cartridge and the manual, the inner box packing, and all that good stuff. So that's one of my prized possessions, is a complete copy of Worm Whomper. Love that game. Now what's interesting, I bought the game from an actual store owner, Sean Kelly. You may recognize Sean Kelly's name from, he's one of the founders of the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas. He's also, he goes way back in collecting circles with the Classic Gaming Expo. He was one of the founders of that. And so Sean Kelly, great guy, met him several times over the years, really cool guy. And he's a store owner, but he had this game for whatever reason. He had a fairly valuable game on his table for $7 factory sealed. I didn't ask any questions, just bought it from him. Happy to get a great bargain. Now this brings me to, there's not as many retro gaming finds today as there was in the 90s and 2000s, because people look these games up on eBay. It's harder to find good stuff at garage sales, flea market, thrift stores. More likely you'll find them on eBay where their prices are a lot higher, at conventions or retro gaming stores where the prices are marked up. But you can still find excellent deals, such as I did with Worm Whomper, and even more recently, at the Retropalooza Arlington a couple of years ago, I found a complete box copy of Up and Down for the Atari 2600. Now, that's a really hard to find game for the 2600, but it was under a box in a tub of just miscellaneous stuff. And once again, the person running this booth was a store owner, a retailer. And I asked him about it. I said, how much is this game? He goes, well, we don't really sell Atari stuff at our store. It just doesn't move. So just name your price. I don't care. And I said, I don't know, $10? Sure. He was happy to sell it. I was very happy to get it. I ended up selling it for around $250 or $300 on eBay, complete. I like the game, but I don't love it like I do Worm Whomper, so I was fine with selling it. I'm happy just owning the cartridge only, Up and Down. It's a cool racing game, kind of like Bump and Jump or something like that, but I was more than happy to make that money. Just last week on Tales from a Retro Gamer number 6, I talked about buying another rare item from a store owner for a very good price. At an expo I went to at Retropalooza Houston, I found a purple ColecoVision in the box. And if you look up Tales from a Retro Gamer number 6, you can find the story of that. Once again, it was, he wanted $40 for it, and I traded a book for it. It was great. So deals are still out there. If you go to a retro gaming store, convention, anything like that, even if you're buying from an expert, you can still find bargains. So don't worry, just look around. So this takes me back to thinking about the Intellivision, Worm Whomper, looking forward to the Amico coming up, the American Gothic cover on Worm Whomper. I'm reminded of 2014. My family and I drove up from Texas all the way to Iowa for one of Walter Day's big trading card expos and award ceremonies. Walter presented me with the award for the different books I write, and that was very cool. It was a very fun event where met Billy Mitchell and Walter Day was there, and a bunch of other notable gamers. And we actually drove out to the American Gothic house, which is what inspired Grant Wood to paint American Gothic. That house is there. They have a museum, and you can pose with farmer's clothes in front of it to look like the painting. We did all that. It was super fun. Carice, my wife, went. Ryan and Katie, my kids. We had a lot of fun. On the way up, we went to St. Louis. We made just a big, epic road trip, family vacation out of it. It was a lot of fun. And one of the highlights was definitely seeing the American Gothic house. Well, there's another Intellivision tie-in here, because the American Gothic house on the premises has a museum. And in that museum, they have, all these different representations of American Gothic pastiches that you've seen over the years, from books, from magazines, from newspapers, from, fan art and all this stuff. There's just representations and advertising and everything. American Gothic has just been parodied again and again and again. Well, they accept donations. If you know of some American Gothic parody that they don't know about, or that you find, or something new comes out or whatever, they're more than happy to accept donations. Now, selfish as I am, I wasn't willing to part with my Worm Whopper game, but as a substitute, they were more than happy. I sent in a scanned copy of the box for their files because they have, notebooks sitting around with, just pictures of American Gothic parodies. They were more than happy to get that. So once we got home after the trip, I scanned Worm Whopper for the Intellivision and sent it in to that museum. So if you ever go up in Iowa and you go to the American Gothic House in the museum, somewhere in there you'll see the Intellivision represented with Worm Whopper. Anyway, so I guess I made my little contribution to society and to the arts world with a little Intellivision love thrown in. Anyway, so speaking of Intellivision, what is your favorite Intellivision game? If you could mention in the comments below, that would be awesome. I would appreciate it. Maybe it's Burger Time, maybe it's Astro Smash. A lot of people like Demon Attack. I love those. My favorite game of all time for the Intellivision is Beauty and the Beast. It's sort of like Donkey Kong. It's arcade-like that. It's fast, it's fun, it's perfectly suited for the Intellivision disc controller. Great game. Leave in the comments below, what is your favorite game? One more thing, you may have noticed I'm wearing the Classic Game Fest t-shirt. That's because the next convention where I'll be a guest is July 27th and 28th at the Classic Game Fest in Austin. You can find them on Facebook, like the page. If you want to check it out, if you happen to be in Austin, Texas area, at the end of July, that weekend, come by and say hey. So anyway, thanks for watching. Like I said, this episode was a little bit all over the map, all the way from Chicago to Iowa to Texas to the Intellivision. But I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you saw the tie-ins there. If you could click like and subscribe, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you next week. Peace out.